Aaron, you got to say it again because the girls think that they can pay for a certification that makes them an expert. What I heard you say is that the only way that you can develop expertise is through experience. Is that what you said? Is that what you had said?
Yes, yes,
Just checking. Just want to make sure I wasn't
absolutely.
mishearing it.
Yeah, yeah. There's context. There's context. There's nuance. There's experience,
Exactly.
pain. There's all the things that make us who we are. That not only does people, but as experts, as professionals, and we can't shortcut that with technology. It can help us, but there always needs, and this kind of goes the same. The copyright question and the expertise question.
Welcome to the Osumaré Learning Podcast, where genius is celebrated, joy is the catalyst, and we learn most deeply by teaching what lights us up. I'm Portia Osumaré, executive learning producer, curriculum designer, and former high school math teacher, and lover of all things wisdom.
And I'm Portia Michele Osumaré, client experience designer, business coach, joy strategist, and a lifelong learner of the sacred and the strategic. Together, we're excavating wisdom from our brightest and most brilliant friends and partners, gaining insight that transform how we learn and how we teach in today's world.
So join us as we offer insights, community wisdom, and unique perspectives on experiential learning. So welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Osumaré Learning Podcast. My name is Portia Michele Osumaré. I am here with Portia Osumaré holding it down in our podcast studio, where this is our season that's really capturing unconventional wisdom for unconventional times. So we are bringing all of our favorite resources of unconventional wisdom in. And today we have with us Miss Erin Austin. Erin is somebody in our world that we have been learning so much from over the past couple of months. And some of these conversations have gotten so good. We keep being like, Erin, come on the podcast. Let's talk about it. Let's find ways to continue to have these conversations, because Erin has a heart for experts in the same way that Portia and I have a heart for experts. So we're really excited to have today be a conversation all about expertise, the reality of expertise in our world, expertise in 2026 and beyond. And some of the things that you may or may not be thinking about in regards to expertise coming from your favorite lawyer person. Everybody needs a good lawyer person in their life that is going to be thinking about the things that, as experts, we don't think about. Erin is one of those people in my world who will say one sentence that I'm always like, ooh, I've been spinning that for months. So I'm very, very excited to introduce you all to Erin and Erin's wisdom, and introduce you all to this conversation, whether or not you think of yourself at the current moment as an expert or not. The reality is, if you've been doing something for a really long time, and eventually you know that a part of your work is going to be to culminate, to curate that knowledge into something, knowing the business of expertise is going to be smart for you to even be paying attention to. If you've never heard the word intellectual property and related them to you, this may be your conversation to lean into. Again, whether you're knee deep in it or you haven't yet even thought about it as a possibility for yourself, being armed with this knowledge is a great idea to know before you even start. So wherever you're at, tune into this conversation as we kick it off with Miss Erin Austin. Erin, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Fantastic. We're always excited. Well, I know that Erin is an expert on expertise and has been an influential factor in Portia and I's life over the last couple of months. But let me tell you a little bit more about Miss Erin, give you the bio to run it down as to kind of some of the reasons why we lean to Erin for her expertise. So Erin Austin is a Harvard Law alumni, business strategist, speaker, and go-to legal mind for experts ready to scale their brilliance. With 25 plus years of experience closing IP-driven deals for major players like MGM and Amazon, Warner Brothers, M3 USA, and helps coaches, consultants protect, license, and monetize their intellectual property legally and ethically. As the founder of Think Beyond IP, she's the trusted advisor to expertise-based business navigating the legal and ethical minefield of copyright, client work, and the exploding use of AI. In a world where content can be copied in seconds and AI blurs the lines between original and automated, and helps her clients stay in control, protecting what's theirs, and building what scales. Known for her sharp insight, her plain English advice, I know that's right, she empowers experts to turn their genius into sustainable, scalable businesses without putting their IP at risk. That's the receipts. so y'all can know who Erin is to us in our life and why. Again, I'm so happy to have you here. Your resume precedes, and I know that one of the things that we always talk about in our first meetings is how much of this work you've done for massive corporations and organizations, and how much of it really does affect people, even if they're not a massive corporation, just in general in dealing with these corporations, but also in the individual expert, right? The small expertise business. I'm interested in kind of your view, honestly, of a bit of your backstory as to why IP, intellectual property, and protecting expertise became the thing that you were interested in actually starting or getting into. Give me a bit of the backstory. How did we get here?
Wow. Okay, we're going back, You already said some of the numbers. So, I started out as a corporate lawyer, and never been to LA. And one weekend, I had a friend, like he was from LA. We went to LA, and I get off the plane, the sun, the palm trees, the ocean, the whole thing. And I said, this is it. I went back to my law firm job and quit and moved to LA without a job.
LA will do that to you.
And got a job at Warner Brothers. That was my first job directly with intellectual property. IP is everywhere, but directly working with intellectual property in the film business. So I was in the film business for 10 years, and then have been in-house ever since, mostly in-house ever since. And so growing up inside of big corporations, made sense to me. And then there's this little thing called the 2016 election that made me feel differently about the work I was doing, and made me like, why am I spending my life making big companies bigger? Like, and how do I use what I know to work with, basically my goal was to help get more wealth in the hands of women, because frankly, women do better things. I mean, we need to look no further than Bezos' fortune to see how women spend that money versus the way that the man spends the money.
Quiet as
And then it was the job of translating what I do, to this population of women and smaller businesses. And like, what I know? I know the relationship between the supplier or the vendor to big corporations. I'm on the other side of that. That's where I spent my career, and helping those suppliers understand that, your expertise is valuable. There's a reason why they're coming to you. They want you. You're not just hands. You're not, commodity. You are the expert, and we need to start treating your expertise as a valuable asset that it is. And so that became frankly a career, kind of a switching to educator, to make sure people understand the value of their expertise, to not be afraid of those conversations with their corporate clients, to make sure they're thinking proactively about owning and controlling it so that they can build businesses that are scalable, that they're not selling their time, that they're selling on their expertise. And so that it took me a bit to get through. It wasn't overnight. And learning the language, like learning what that side of the desk is thinking about versus the other side. That's also been a transition for me as well. I first started talking about intellectual capital, and people were like, what? It was like, just, you could hear the crickets. So you had to like figure out, okay, what are experts worried about? What are they thinking about? And so that's been, my last 5 years, I want to say, that I've really been digging into. It could be longer than that. Time goes so fast. Of really talking to this audience of experts.
Oh, well, and so much that you just said right there, like, sparked so much for me, because I know, as a person to whom experts are quite a bit of my audience, I find that there's this really interesting progression that happens, I think, with almost all business owners, particularly service-based business owners, but even louder in the expert field, where you start to go from looking for yourself as a vendor for hire to looking for yourself as there's a body of work that kind of comes along with this, and it in and of itself has a life of its own, which requires protection and formulating and things of that nature. So it really speaks to me as to what you're saying, as to what that has looked like. I wanted to go back though, a couple to kind of ground some foundational pieces into this conversation. For anybody that's listening that may just be unfamiliar with what we're talking about, what is your definition of intellectual property? And what is your definition of what it looks like to protect that intellectual capital per se? Give me your definition of some of these words and your working definitions.
Yeah, well, intellectual property is a legal term, and we're going to talk about U.S. law here. And so
Fantastic.
basically, yes, in the U.S., the law provides protections for people who use knowledge to create intangible assets. So somebody writes a book. That book is intellectual property. That form of intellectual property we protect with copyright. Somebody creates a new design, like the golden arches of McDonald's. That is a trademark. That tells the world that wherever you see those golden arches, that you know that that is a McDonald's restaurant, toy, whatever. And that we protect with trademark law. That's a form of intellectual property. When we create a new invention, such as a new machine or a new pharmaceutical or a new way to kill bugs. These are things that these new inventions are protected with patents, and that's a form of intellectual property. There's another form of intellectual property called trade secrets, such as the secret formula to Coca-Cola or the recipe for fried chicken. Those are considered trade secrets, and that's also a form of intellectual property that's protected under U.S. law. And basically what it does is it makes sure that the investment that the creator, the painter, whatever, that they can profit from their expertise, so they have protections, so that you have exclusive use over that piece of intellectual property for whatever the designated number of years is. It's different depending on the nature of the IP, so that you can profit from it, and therefore you are incentivized to make the investment in it. And for this audience, mostly I'm going to just guess that copyright is the form of intellectual property that's most of interest to us. So again, going back to our books, to this podcast, to our workbooks, to our websites, to our social media posts, to our white papers, all those things are protected by copyright. And that means that we have the exclusive rights to how those are used, copied, distributed in order to make a derivative from it, like turning a book into a movie. So all those things, that means that if you want to use my book, you have to come to me. I have exclusive rights to how it is used. Same with my training programs, my workshops, and my other works. So that's copyright law. And I think that's probably where most of us hang out. Sometimes, trademarks might be of interest to some people. I'm not a trademark lawyer, but that's for those of us who have logos or names and things like that, that some people may have their trademark protection as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm like, I want to be a nerd and ask 5,000 questions right now. I'm like, ooh, calm it down, Portia. This is not your personal podcast conversation. But I will ask
And
one
that's
question.
the benefit of being the host. You get to get free advice.
Right? Because I'm like, wait a minute. One question that I have, I guess maybe I'll ask two questions in there. One, what intrigues me about the idea of copyright versus trademark, I would love for you to explain a little bit about what the difference is. And then I also would love for you to expand on, when do you know that you need one or the other?
Okay. So trademark, again, that is about the public being able to identify the source of a good, like McDonald's, or a service think beyond IP. I actually do not have a trademark on it, but we're going to use it just for the purposes of this. So think beyond IP tells me that that is Erin Austin's firm, and so if you see it on my presentations, you know that that presentation came from me, because that's my trademark. That tells you what the source of that presentation is. Versus copyright, that is actually an expression of a new idea. So am I expressing it in writing? So I write a book, I write an article. It has to be original, it has to have some measure of creativity, and it has to be created by a human. And so when I have those pieces in place, then I can protected by copyright. You cannot protect by copyright a logo or a title, for instance, but you can protect the whole expression of my idea. Not the idea itself, but the way I expressed it, the way I wrote it down, the way I painted it, the way I chiseled it into stone, the way I danced it, the way I express an idea. We capture that into what was intangible in my head and I make it tangible, putting it on paper, putting it on canvas, and that is copyrightable, that work, and that's what I can protect from other people copying it without my permission.
Fantastic. Okay, that makes sense to me. Like the assets, the things, the expressions, the tangibility are the things that we copyright. Trademark is more along the lines, do you trademark the
brand.
idea or do you trademark what the idea
Trademarks
looks like?
is about branding. Trademarks,
Okay.
think of it as your brand. I think that's a shortcut for that one, yes. So it's not
Fantastic.
the content. The content, copyright, the brand, trademark.
Fantastic. And, I heard you say that it needed to be created by a human. We're going to go there a little bit later because I said, wait a minute. But in this conversation, I also want to know if we are talking about copyright, because creative expression is what thought leaders do. Experts create and put their expertise out there in the world. So copyright, I can see why you're saying that. For most of y'all, copyright is your conversation. Unless you got the 13 secret seasonings, copyright is probably your conversation. When should people start thinking about their idea of if something that they have is even copyrightable?
Yeah. Good question. And I would say that as soon as we are using our own expertise in the creation process, as opposed to just having someone say, here is a paint by numbers, and I need you to fill in the paint into the spots. That's not yours. It's not original. It's not yours. You're not doing anything. But when you are the person who is creating the work, like you are writing the articles, you are creating the training programs, you are recording your podcasts. Those are the things that we want to make sure that we are mindful of the ability to protect it by copyright. Now, I want to kind of back up a second with copyright. Copyright attaches automatically as soon as we meet those elements. It's original, it is somewhat creative, so it's not like a telephone book, and it's created by a human, and you put it in some sort of tangible form. You write it down, you paint it, you sculpt it. It is automatically protected by copyright law in the US. And so as we sit here, we are creating a copyrightable asset. Before we do anything else, just sitting here recording it, we're creating an asset. And so we want to make sure that we are, documenting really. So let's say you are a graphic designer. And so you may think, well, my clients come to me and they say, I want this look and that, and these are the elements, and here's something. And so you think, well, it's theirs. And they do own it, of course. But what about the process? Like, do you sit down with a blank slate every time you have a new client and just kind of figure it out as you go? Or do you have a whole process in place that you use so that every time you get the result that you need, that you get more efficient, you get better, you can then use it. Maybe you want to train somebody else to do it with you. These are the things that we should be thinking about. Like even when we're still doing what I'll call hands work, we're just kind of selling our time. As we continue to do that, we should be looking at commonalities, processes, SOPs and templates. These are all things we should be thinking about creating that can be monetizable separately from our hand.
That's a very, very good point. And what that brings up for me when you say that is also the intricacies of great facilitators and practitioners often, again, feel like vendors. Well, a company comes in and they hire me and I'll ask them, well, tell me what you do. Well, I do my thing and 20 people in the room feel better after I leave. And I'm like, well, let's talk about what your thing is. And you come down to asking question after question. And it comes down to like, I actually have this very specific process that I always take people through. I even have these fail safes that if this happens, I do this. And if that happens, then I will do this. If you've been doing it for a certain amount of time, the process is the money, even if the thing that you do is unique and curated to every group of people who's in front of you. I'm hearing you say that you may still have a process and a portion of that that is documentable and again repeatable, because I think that often great facilitators have expert ways in which they craft how they talk about a subject, even if there are 50 other people who are talking about the same subject. Their way of going about it is different. Am I getting that correct in that?
Absolutely. There's a reason why they chose you versus the next person. What is that thing? What's the delta between you and the next person? That is your expertise, and that's the thing that you want to develop and protect. Absolutely.
This is going to get me on a whole nother level. I love this so much also because, Erin, one of the things that matters to me so much about people in having businesses that they really, really love, because my work in the world is really all about the heart-centered people, the contribution-focused leaders that are out here doing the thing every day, getting what they give. And a big part of that is how you work your business. It's not necessarily what you do. It is how you spend your day to day that actually means the fulfillment of whether or not you typically enjoy the process. And I find that so many people discount themselves and feel like they don't have expertise because their expertise may not be exactly in the subject matter, but it may be in the process. And for folks who are more builder mentality or who are more structurally oriented, they deeply discount that as a genius and as a brilliant, and like you said, something that not only can be protected, but also can be taught and bring you another entire revenue stream if your process is really efficient and effective.
Yes, absolutely. And the only way to do that is start at the beginning, right? And make sure you are documenting everything. And, wouldn't it be lovely for you to be able to either train other people to do what you do or to license it directly to the end client? Like maybe they can take your process and get the results on their own, and you don't even have to be anywhere near that for that result to happen. And so, but the only way you can do that is to have something original that's yours. If all you're doing is taking stuff that you got off the internet. I have a thing about this is, everyone has different opinions about like endless numbers of certifications. I have a thing about that.
Same.
Because
We're
what's yours in that? What's yours in that when all you do is get one certification after another and deliver somebody else's stuff? I mean, where's the growth there? So make sure you have. And it, which is, I imagine you talk about niches. That's the beauty of a niche, right? Like, okay, so maybe there is something that you get certified in that's kind of up here at the, ICF level, but then I know how to coach mothers to do some specific thing. And then you develop your own, skills and processes and training around that. And that's, that's the thing that will get you to the next level.
I love this. And I think as a conversation, one of the things that comes out as you're saying this is that like it makes me want to say like have the audacity to be more unique. As we've been recording this podcast all week, almost everyone's themes are around like more radical authenticity, less taking something to jump off of and running with your own thing and thinking through, what is your own, right? If you, let's say, are you ICF certified? There may be a process that you get taught in how to coach, but the frameworks of how you go about coaching your particular clients to a certain result can be yours. And I think that it's interesting because when we go into corporate spaces, the energy is be less unique and more conformed. Whereas when you're in an entrepreneur space, you almost have to unlearn that as a concept so that you can, actually exist in a competitive field and even have something to copyright. To that point, my question becomes, how does tech come into this? Because you said it needed to be made by a human. And I think that so many of us are using not only human input in our creative processes, possibly at a time where is may or may not be helpful. Like you may not know that you may be walking yourself out of copyright qualification in the end because of the beginning of your process. If you wouldn't mind, give me some of your thoughts and how you've seen that work with clients. The Osumaré Learning Podcast is brought to you by two sponsors that are near and dear to our hearts. Because we built them. First up, Business Cousins. Business Cousins is a collective of call to serve leaders who are building businesses that create impact that actually matters. We're about doing real good in the world, giving people the results they paid for, and having a damn good time doing it. If you're into running a business that you actually love, hanging out with smart and soulful folks while you do it, and being supported every step of the way, this may be the room for you. We host gatherings, workshops, and offer ongoing business development support that's as human as it is helpful. If you're interested, apply today at thebusinesscousin.com. Check us out at www.thebusinesscousin.com. And then there's the Author's Leverage. That's our studio for turning your body of work into powerful learning tools. Whether it's digital workbooks, private podcasts, or binge-worthy education content that helps you scale your impact without burning out, we specialize in transforming complex ideas into accessible, engaging learning experiences that your audience will actually use and implement. Our team of expert creators, instructional designers, and production specialists ensure that your wisdom reaches more people in the ways that truly resonate. If you're an expert, author, thought leader, sitting on brilliance, let us help you package it. Learn more at theauthorsleverage.com. That is theauthorsleverage.com.
Yeah. So one of my things I love to say is do not use AI. We're talking about artificial intelligence. Do not use AI to create your money makers. And that is because, as the U.S. law is currently, who knows how it may change in the future, but currently, any content that is created by artificial intelligence is not eligible for copyright protection. So what does that mean? So if I use artificial intelligence to create my training materials, and that is how my business is generating revenue, somebody else can come along and take it and copy it word for word, and I have no remedy because it is not eligible for copyright protection. And so if you want to make sure that you have exclusive use over the things that you are hanging your business on, make sure it's original content that is eligible for copyright protection. The other thing with the copy of using AI, obviously, is we don't know, there are no generative AI tools that I'm aware of that will guarantee that you don't have infringing work in the output. Ooh. So maybe you're not using it, maybe it's not for your moneymaker, but maybe it's just for an article. It's not meant to be evergreen or anything, but it infringed somebody else's work. Well, now not only do you have a legal problem, you have a reputational problem, you have all sorts of problems. And so but to be clear, I am pro artificial intelligence, I'm pro AI, I use AI. But we do need to make sure that we understand when it's appropriate to use it and what protections we need to put around. I should say guardrails. What guardrails to put around using AI.
Love. Well, let's dig into a little bit of those. Like if you have do's and don'ts of like, these are things that are great to use AI for. These are things I probably wouldn't use AI for.
Well, there's different types of AI. So let's just talk about generative AI first. So these are the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, I forget what are the other ones.
And I think that that's probably the majority of what the AI that folks are getting in trouble with.
I would say that's probably true. That's absolutely true. So, and let's just assume now you're using the free versions, because there's different things that if you're using enterprise versions as well. So you're using the free version. So for one, do not put any confidential information in the input. The input, whatever the chat, what you put in the chat box, that becomes part of the training data of that model. So if you put in there, my client XYZ company is having these problems and they're worried about this and what should I advise them to do? Well, that information, that confidential information that your client shared with you is now in the large language model's training data. That's bad. And so we don't put confidential information in there. We don't put personally identifiable information in there. And we don't use other people's IP. Now, I'm also a practical woman. I know people put other people's IP in there. They will do it, make a summary, do these things like that. But it is technically a derivative work, what comes out the other end. So if I put in, a Wall Street Journal article, and say, create an abstract for me. It, depending on how much similarity there is between the output and the input, that could be an infringing use, right? Now let's talk about the outputs. So again, anything that comes out of it is not eligible for copyright protection. So if you're making, if you're putting in, you're saying like, I need 10 social media posts that are quippy social media posts, 25 words each that I'm gonna, put in my social media calendar. Guess what? I don't care. Do it. I don't care. So it'll be what it'll be. Maybe if you like him, use him. I'm not worried about copyright protecting your social media post, your 20-word social media post. I'm not worried about copyright infringements of your 20-word media posts, social media posts. Go ahead and use it. That's fine use for it. But don't use it for anything that you want to be evergreen either. Even if you're not selling it, even if it's not a moneymaker, but it's something that you want to have it represent Erin. Like if this is supposed to represent Erin, it should not be coming out of ChatGPT. That needs to come out of Erin, right? And so that's the other, even if I'm not selling it, it's if I am presenting it as a representation of me, then it should be like, I don't pretend that my website copy is Erin Austin. It's not. It's just describing my services and just my bio. My bio came out of ChatGPT. It's not. You don't hire me because of that.
Literally.
You hire me because of what I know, right? And so
That makes sense.
Understanding the difference, yes.
That makes sense. And I think that it's interesting that you say that. It reminds me of a conversation that I had earlier this week with our marketing team. Inside, we did a panel podcast and we were talking about some of the dangers of AI when it comes to a branding conversation, because and our graphic designer was speaking to, like, if your entire values, bylaws, how you work, where you work, the way you work, all comes from AI, when I go to design a brand identity around that, there's no you in it. It's all kind of like an aggregation of general information. There's no root of that creativity of you. And one of the things that was mentioned on that podcast that I found was so interesting was this idea that the trends that a lot of the marketing folks are seeing is that people are getting inundated with it. And so it's becoming very easy to go, that thing over there feels inauthentic. And so from a business use case, it actually is not the smartest for everything that you put out externally to be attached to something that somebody, could search and get a similar, response in, because it breaks the trust ongoingly as things become more overproduced and more AI produced, because AI is producing things at the top of this level of production. Folks are like, oh, man, I could look even shinier, but it's having you maybe also look slightly inauthentic. This reminds me of that conversation. And as I kind of turn the tables of this podcast to kind of look toward the future of what expertise is going to look like in an AI world, in a complex world, in a world where we can barely trust the government and the food's coming in our mouths on a regular basis, what are some of your thoughts in how you feel like expertise is changing, and maybe some things that you want experts to be thinking about where the future is going, at least from your vantage point?
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's only one way to get expertise, and that's in the doing, right? That's in the experience. And so
We should say it again. Wait, Erin, you got to say it again, because the girls think that they can pay for a certification that makes them an expert. What I heard you say is that the only way that you can develop expertise is through experience. Is that what you said? Is that what you had said?
Yes.
Just checking. Just want to make sure I wasn't mishearing it.
Yeah. There's context. There's context. There's nuance. There's experience.
Exactly.
Pain. There's all the things that make us who we are, that not only just people, but as experts, as professionals. And we can't shortcut that with technology. It can help us, but there always needs, and this kind of goes the same, the copyright question and the expertise question are parallel. They're not the same because they are two different things, but they are parallel, as in, using AI to create content, that raw output is not eligible for copyright protection, but you can use it as a starting point. So you can use it like, okay, and now I'm going to layer on who I am, who my clients are, the things that make, my point of view different than the thing that came out of AI. And when I layer all that in, that most likely is eligible for copyright protection. And at the same time, when I'm building my expertise and there is something comes up, your client mentions something like, God, I've never heard that before. And you look it up and you ask Chat about it and you say like, what is this? And it tells you about it. And then you go, now you use your, the circumstances of that client, other sources, your own experience, and layer it on top of that to add it into your own, kind of, file cabinet of expertise. It doesn't mean that we can't use the resources that are available to us. Online resources have been available for, 40 years. I can't keep up.
Yeah.
And before that it was books. I mean, there's just, we do learn from other people. There's no crime in learning from other people. But we need to make sure that we're not what we are presenting to the client as a deliverable, what we are presenting to the world as our work, whether it's in an article or a book or a podcast, that we are adding to what's coming out of that tool. And so we're actually learning it and not just regurgitating it. So
That makes sense. Real quick, I would ask, is there a benefit to citing sources?
Well, you mean like AI as a source? Is that what you mean? Or you mean real sources like an academic journal or a book that you read?
I mean, a little bit of both, right? So like to give an example, I may use, like we have certain AI tools that are not connected to, like they're paid AI tools that aren't connected to like the main vein of, overarching cloud that will take, large amounts of information that we may have gathered for a client and aggregate it into bullet points that I can give them as a deliverable to kind of like remind them, what work we did together, or like a Fathom recap, right, for being on a call so that they can quickly see what it is that we talked about. That's a deliverable that I may give to a client, but I'm very honest with that client and tell them I created this with AI. This is an AI recap of this conversation that we had, right? So there's one thing to cite that source in that way, but then I also think about like what happened to back in the days when you wrote an article and someone said a quote and you said, oh, this is where I got it from. Like, is that still something that, like, are people like, I guess what I'm saying is like, is it more helpful when it comes to maybe even the infringement conversation to say, I read this book and this is where I got this particular concept and that's how I created X, Y, and Z. Like, is that still worth it?
Okay, so two separate things. So on the infringement issue, so citing somebody else's work is not the same thing as permission to use it. So if you've used somebody else's work without their permission, that's still infringement. Now there is fair use. Fair use is nuanced, but it is if you use like just a minor part, so you're just taking out a sentence, a quotation, whatever. And obviously when you quote someone, you would cite them. But it does not, but that wouldn't rise to the level of infringement. I mean, that's just good hygiene, like, to use citations. But if you use someone else's article and the fact that you cited them does not give you permission, that is infringement. For AI, there's different. Now, this is an ethical issue here, whether or not to disclose when you're using AI. To me, you don't have a contractual obligation to do so, but that you may feel that if you've used in circumstances where you used AI to create a report for a client, it may be part of your company's AI policy to disclose how you use it. I have clients who put it right in their client agreements, that how they use AI. I know some people who put it on their websites, how they use AI. And so these are people who feel very strongly about it, obviously, because the vast majority of people are using it and don't disclose it, right? I mean, most people are using it without disclosing it. So it really depends on how you're using it. Now, are you using AI to process your client's data? That you probably need consent for. Yeah. So that you do need to disclose to make sure you have permission to use your client's data in AI tools or to use their, personally identifiable information in tools. I have often addressed organizational psychologists. Somehow I've become a fan among organizational psychologists. And so they have different issues because they're working one-on-one with employees on issues, and so they obviously need to have consent before they use AI to when in their work. So it depends on how you're using it. So Yeah.
I love again. And Erin, I know we're going to wrap this conversation down. You have to come back again because I really do need part 2. Because now my questions are like, well, what happens if you're certified in something, but you're a practitioner of it? And how does the licensing works, right? Like, so many of us are in that world. That just means you got to come back for round 2. Because I know folks are going to probably have so many more conversations or so many more questions kind of after this about how it looks like it applies to them. If folks want to connect with you more, because I know that you are such a brilliant educator in this and are constantly putting out information for folks to be able to kind of wrap their brains around this concept, where can folks connect with you to get more information?
Yeah. Oh, I like to say I'm the OG Erin Austin on LinkedIn. That's how long I've been on there. We keep going back to that big number you mentioned at the beginning. So Erin Austin, just put Erin Austin in LinkedIn and you will find me there. And I love to connect with you.
Fantastic. I love that you're the OG because I'm like, a name like Erin Austin, you're like, oh no, I'm the first. I actually got it first. Thanks so much.
I am the first.
I love as a person who IP is your stuff. I can't say that the brand is strong. I love DC, and I know that I'm the OG. Thanks. Erin, thank you so much for this conversation. I hope that those of you all who are listening are hearing something that sparks your curiosity. That is our goal with these informational podcasts. You probably heard something that you didn't know today, or heard something that you may want to think about preparing for, somebody that you want to go to your business professional support partners and be like, hey, am I prepared around this? Did we do something about this? Allow this conversation to spark you into more curiosity as to how you can better protect yourselves and the people that you care about in regards to your expertise business or the expertise businesses of the people who you care about around you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Connect with us at the Osumaré Learning Podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can also find us at the favorite place for listening to podcasts. And we will see you next time around. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and consider what was shared today. Thanks to our guests for sharing. Thank you to Portia for holding us in this container. And thank you for listening. We hope that something that was shared today sparks a new idea, inspires a new action, or creates something that you're excited to share with your community.
And thanks to Portia for leading this wonderful conversation and for bringing the vibe. Make sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and hit us up on LinkedIn or Instagram. We want to hear what this sparks for you. So do us a favor, drop a review or leave a comment with what you thought.
All right, friends. We will see you next time on the Osumaré Learning Podcast. I'm already looking forward to it.
Me too.